And I'll send an email. I'll send a note to Dan Resnick because I know he is very interested.
Good.
Let's just see if he lost track or if he shows up on your screen in a few minutes.
All right. Take care.
All right.
So we'll see
Caitlin,
you on
now
Wednesday.
I'll see you on Thursday.
And we'll see you
Okay.
on Wednesday for the next one of these Zooms.
Yeah, I'll be there to open up for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Very
Take care.
good. I'm leaving, but you're not.
Okay. Right. Okay,
All
Jake.
right.
So as you read in the email, the board met a couple weeks ago and decided to continue the work of the Kaplan Center in some form or another. The extent to which we do work will depend on our resources, clearly. And we just want to know what, you and I we have had more conversations than others, but what is of value to you and your colleagues about the Kaplan Center that you want to have continued, whether it's programmatic and or website?
Sure. I think the opportunity to come together and the webinars, like those kinds of gathering opportunities, are valuable for at least I believe, for Reconstructionist rabbis to come together and have a chance to learn from each other. And I think with other Kaplan-leaning thinkers, I think there's an important opportunity to come together and kind of further the educational work of Kaplan's vision. So I think, to me, in my mind, that's the most important. That's the most important piece of the Kaplan Center's work. There are places for that in the RA, I think within Reconstructing Judaism as well, but they are more focused on, I would argue, and I think intentionally and without ill will, sort of focused on pushing forward Reconstructionist thought, which I think is, at this point in our history, is distinctly different in some ways than Kaplanian thought. And while I think the two are connected, I think that they're somewhat different. So in my mind, that's the thing that I find most valuable about the Kaplan Center. I think the challenge with that is that in the day-to-day, there's always so much going on, and it's hard to find time, even for me, and I'm particularly interested in the work of the Kaplan Center. Jeffrey is a teacher and a colleague and a friend and someone I care about. And I just have a hard time figuring out how to fit some of those pieces in. So access to listen to webinars afterward, recordings of them, I think would be really valuable.
In a week or so, there's going to be a conversation that Caitlin had with a person named Emmett, which will be on the website under the Kaplanian Voices. It is really wonderful and very in line with what's happening with Reconstructionism today. Really wonderful. So let me ask you something. And the last conversation we had at 4:00 was a woman who's very involved in Musar, Zooming, and she spent at least 3 years studying it. It turns out had not gone on to the Kaplan Center website. She goes on to the Reconstructing Judaism website. And it occurred to us, what would be involved, both, I guess, politically, in having the Kaplan Center be a tab on either your website or the college's website. College in particular for outsiders who aren't part of the RA.
I think that I'm happy to answer that, and I saw that Mel wanted to say something, and I want to make space for that.
Okay.
I think that in my opinion, I'm not sure that inherently it makes sense to connect with the RRA in that way, because
it's a limited
because
group.
the Kaplan Center is not just about Reconstructionist rabbis, although I think there's a large portion of the audience that is, but I think it's not just Reconstructionist rabbis, and it's not just rabbis. So in some ways, I think that's complicated. We do include items from the Kaplan Center in our bi-monthly e-blast.
Thank you.
And that feels important to me, because I think it's an incredible resource. And the truth is, I don't know the answer about what it would take to become a tab on Reconstructing Judaism's website. Unfortunately, I'm not your guy for that. I think that, and maybe that's a question for Amber Powers, who's in the executive leadership at the movement. She might be the right place to raise that conversation. And I should say, I think that it would be an interesting conversation to have. And I don't know if that's a conversation about resourcing, or I just don't know the logistics of that. But I think it'd be worth raising in terms of sort of the long-term sustainability of some of that work. I think that in some ways the Kaplan Center overlaps with places like Evolve and places like Ritual Well at times. And so I think that so I'm not certain what that role would look like.
All right. Okay. We can, that's
okay.
a very good answer.
Yeah.
Mel,
and to make it,
sorry.
Yeah. Mel, you speak first and then I'll talk.
Mel, did you want to say something?
My dog was playing with a toy and it was making some noise. I was asking Cole to shut the door. Mel, you were going to say something, and I want to hear that.
Well, I had a number of thoughts. First of all, I want to thank you for adding my posts to the rabbinic newsletter. While there's a very important difference, which you alluded to, between Kaplanian thought and Reconstructionism, I guess I'm finding myself as an Orthodox Kaplanian.
You certainly are.
I do believe, and I think your acceptance of my posts from Kaplanian sources indicates, that there's a part of your mind which believes Kaplan is eternal in a certain sense. I hope that that's the case. Maybe I'll put it in the form of a question, whether that is the case. That the Kaplanian classical principles that I've been giving you and that are on my Facebook group, apply in a sort of, in other words, the application is different, and the modernization is different, and the updating is different, but the principle is what. Let me give an example. I was very, although you haven't seen the interview of Emmett, this is a transgendered person. And I'll tell you the truth, Caitlin, I wasn't sure whether it was a male become female, a female become male, but maybe that's part of the message of what's happening here. But I was very moved by this person who was obviously searching for a comfortable place. And what I was thinking of is I was thinking of the New Deal, as a matter of fact, and the difference between the philosophy of the New Deal and gender identity politics at the moment. And what I mean to say is I think we have to find principles applications, situations in which I, as a white male, binary person, is comfortable, and where Emmett is comfortable. And I think that is very, very Kaplanian, you know.
It made me very proud that that we're a movement where this kind of conversation could take place and be encouraged, because it wouldn't in other places. I mean, certainly in the general populace, people just can't deal with it. So
Right.
I was very proud that it was it was a very comfortable, enlightening conversation.
So what I've addressed to James is that the kind of general civilizational principle which applies to all of us, the white male at one end of the spectrum, the white female, and a person like Emmett at the other end of the spectrum. Is there what kind of thinking is going on at the moment that we might incorporate?
I don't know that I have an answer to that question. I mean, I think I want to go back to the question that you asked earlier, which is, are there principles about Kaplan that are sort of the ner tamid of the in that way of the movement? I believe that the answer to that question is, well, I think that there are pieces of Kaplan's teaching, right? The idea of a civilizational approach to Jewish life, the kind of the idea of importance of cultural expression, and those kind of key pieces that are present within Reconstructionism, and I believe will continue to be. And I don't personally see a movement distinct without those kinds of principles, without those kinds of ideas. So I think that there are pieces that are Kaplanian still about the movement. I am not. I think that as Kaplan's vision for Jewish life becomes more and more and more normative, I think that the distinction between what makes Reconstructionism in a contemporary setting, as opposed to the Reform movement, for example, which by and large has adopted many of Kaplan's visions.
Dating back years and years.
So I think the things
Eric, whatever his name, I can't remember.
But what I mean is that I think the things that make the Reform movement distinct from the Reconstructionist movement are less about the ideologies of Kaplan or not, right? It's less about ethical monotheism or an evolving religious civilization, and more about kind of other practical issues that are not, I would argue, less philosophical, less theological in their approach. So pardon me 1 second. I'm getting a call I need to take. I'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Fine.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Mel, if it's okay to interject, I think that part of the thing that maybe the Kaplan Center can do, and part of the thing that might become important later on, is the fact that people will inevitably revisit some of these principles that you're talking about when they decide how they want to approach their Judaism, right? Especially when it comes time to figure out, how do we make our Judaism distinct? Because as Rabbi Greene mentioned, we have renewal and Aleph, we have RJ, we have Reconstructing Judaism, and a lot of progressive Jews, when it comes time for them to shul shop or decide what is the path they want to take, they see a bunch of different progressive synagogues, they see a bunch of different progressive networks, and kind of combing through the weeds and figuring out how do they make the most of an ethical Judaism for them, it becomes almost impossible without having a guiding philosophy, I think. So I think having that education and having those principles become visible and accessible is crucial, because somebody somewhere is going to revisit those and make sure that those are helping us make our decisions. We need to have some kind of ethical framework, is what I'm saying. you know, we can see the impact Kaplan had because of the fact that he had a sociological and anthropological approach to Judaism. You can't escape it now. You know what I mean?
You
Yeah,
know,
I think. Go
I-
ahead, Mel.
I
I
think-
apologize.
I think what's very relevant here, which we don't hear enough about, is Kaplan's notion of salvation, um, which means, you know, in all of my reading of these many years of the Kaplan Diary, I have indicated that when I find Kaplan writing much more about the growth of the individual, about the fulfillment of the individual, about the self-realization of the individual, which of course results in her having a larger vision and a larger sense of themselves. But it begins with the individual, and people. I published an article, if I could be a little bit self-publicizing here, in the latest, because you mentioned reform, in the latest issue of the CCAR journal, I have an article on the philosophy of need as reflected in Kaplan and his discovery of the humanistic psychologists of mid-century, Maslow and Eric Fromm and Karen Horney, and so on and so forth. And I feel that this philosophy of need applies to everyone all across the spectrum, and is the kind of principle that I was talking about before, that we, you know, John Dewey said that life is about growth, and so we need to find ways in which we encourage growth and in which we relate to that concept. Yeah.
So getting back to the task at hand for tonight, what are the activities and in terms of webinars and things of that sort and publications and elements of the website that you value and would like to see continued?
I must say I'm being involved in thought projects like the 21st century vision for Kaplanian education. I think was really meaningful, and I think has influenced how I teach, how I write, how I think about the Jewish world. I personally don't use the tool that exists on the website with any regularity, simply because it's not part of my day-to-day work. I think that you might find a different feedback from a colleague who works in Jewish education more directly. But my work in human services and social services probably doesn't align with it in the same way. Although I think that project, I can point to specific moments where that project influenced things around the strategic vision that I'm working on with my agency now. So I think I can draw corollaries to it, but it's not a tool that I use on the website as much. But again, I think I'm really one voice, and I think what I appreciate about the Kaplan Center is that in my non-congregational rabbinic identity and my rabbinic role, I think there's a place for real thoughtful, mindful discussion about how Kaplan's teaching influences Jewish life outside of the synagogue, in a way that for me has not existed in some other venues as strongly. And so that to me has been fascinating, has been really meaningful, really interesting. What I mean by that is I think a conversation about a 21st century approach to Kaplanian education through the movement, I think would by and large be focused on colleagues that are working in Jewish education in that field, and would miss a portion of our colleagues like me who are doing meaningful Jewish educational work, but doing it outside of the traditional congregational context.
I just wanted to ask whether in your educational work and the application of Kaplan, whether the principles of democracy figure as central, because I think Kaplan believed very, very strongly in equality before the law and due process. So I wonder whether or not there's any venue in which people are applying these principles to the Torah, for example, which I think it would be a major Kaplanian way to go. Yeah.
I can't think of a place like that, at least at the moment, but I agree with you certainly.
Now
I
we
mean, for example, there are certain elements of Kaplan's thought that have become completely lost. Kaplan was an internationalist from the word go. It was not only at the end of his life that he talked about the importance of international cooperation. He talked about the limitation of, he was very, very radical. He talked about the limitation of national sovereignty, which was a kind of proto-arms limitation idea. And he did that in the 1930s. He did it during the war. He said, you know, we have not only do we want peace, but we want to create a world in which wars cannot occur. And that kind of international cooperation limitation concerned with the spread of nuclear energy, it is off the chart. I don't see it.
Yeah, it certainly is hidden in his in the way that we think about Kaplan today.
Well, his last book, The Religion of Ethical Nationhood. I mean, that's the main thesis. We need an internet. His when we interviewed his when Mel interviewed his daughters, they were saying, oh, Papa, he has all these highfalutin ideas of getting all the nations of the world together. It's very powerful in that last book. He's so
James,
afraid of it.
Do you think there would be any interest in the Reconstructionist rabbinic community in the idea of disarmament as a Kaplanian notion?
I think there would be.
I don't see it in any Jewish agency. Do you know a Jewish agency that is talking about disarmament?
I
mean, I think that it's a great question.
Yeah, I think that's also a tough question. So for example, I know the SAJ talks about principles of democracy and overthrowing tyranny. And there are a lot of places, for example, that have prayers for overthrowing autocracy or overthrowing tyranny because of the counting of the Omer right now. And because obviously the invasion of Ukraine is on people's mind. Disarmament outside of an Israeli context, like Israel-Palestine, is not particularly popular, I would say, because people are concerned about Ukraine's sovereignty.
Say that again, Caitlin.
Disarmament as a concept, from what I've seen in Jewish circles right now, is not particularly popular because people are concerned about Ukraine's sovereignty. The idea being, if Ukraine cannot defend itself, that it will fall to an autocracy.
Sure, and I think the same thing could be said about Israel-Palestine, right? I mean, and also a whole bunch of other issues that come up in that conversation. It's a great question, Mel. I actually think there would be interest in a conversation about Kaplan's vision around disarmament. And I wonder, is it like is it more like Altneuland, or is it more like a real honest to goodness belief of what should exist? Like, do you know what I mean, Mel? Is it more like a kind of a is it more like a mythological vision, or is it right, is it messianic, in which that's our aspiration without an expectation that it will ever come? Or is it a realistic belief that we could achieve complete disarmament? And I frankly, I don't know enough about Kaplan's writing around the matter, or his thinking around the matter to have an answer to that question.
Well, I think Kaplan gives us the principle, and we have to spell out the details.
Right.
In connection with disarmament, I happen to be acquainted with an effort in the 1940s, right after the war, by two Harvard law professors who worked out a complete system of turning the UN charter and the structure of the UN into a organization which could foster the limitation of weapons, and they were very specific in what they were proposing. It's called the Clark and Sohn proposal. So there are people who have taken this idea seriously. To answer your question, I just am impressed with the idea from Kaplan that deeply political and international issues are Jewish issues, and that the Jewish community ought to be involved not only in self-protection, but in these other kinds of issues.
Yeah.
So getting to Tachlis, one of the things that we are hoping is that people who are invested in the future of the Kaplan Center would be willing to help. And you have offered to work on a webinar for next year, right? We have about how Kaplanianism is reflected in different generations of rabbis. We talked about that, no?
I think we did. I think I suggested it. I don't remember.
Right.
I'm happy to help in whatever way you need around it.
Okay. All right. So keep the ideas coming. I mean, you're in touch with lots of people, and it would really be very helpful to us to, if there are issues that you think would be explored well in the context of a webinar. We'd appreciate that. And also, if there are resources on the website that don't exist, or types of things that don't exist, let us know, and if we can put them on, we will. We already have Kaplan Scholars section. Vered Sokol just submitted a paper, and Jenna Josselit did before. She's writing a book on Kaplan for the Yale series. So if there's things that you think would be useful to your colleagues, that it would be really, keep the lines of communication open.
I certainly will.
I will make it a point, James, to send you some gems from Kaplan on the notion of disarmament, on the notion of, that peace means not just the cessation of war, but it also means to create new conditions. Samuel Moyn, M-O-Y-N, who is a scholar from Harvard, has published a number of books in which he talks about the fact that peace, in a certain sense, is off, the docket. That people don't talk anymore about this issue of disarmament, but they expect, because of terrorism and so on and so forth, a continuous sense of conflict. And he's trying to say we've lost something very, very valuable that was present, and the people had a vision. You know, it's like Zionism. That people had a vision of cooperation of Jews and Arabs living together, and we need that again. I think.
As a plug, on Sunday, there's a webinar on the new Zionism. So that, yeah,
And
your whole membership will have gotten that.
That webinar includes people from Israel, which is an important thing. It's not just Americans talking to each other, but it's Israeli reconstructionist types like Gail Schuster-Buskila, you know, talking with Americans and so on and so forth.
I have a
Well,
question if it's
yeah.
okay. Oh, go ahead, Rabbi.
No, please go ahead.
Okay. My question is, you know, I've heard that we are an essential resource for rabbis of reconstructing Judaism. And I'm wondering if there's anything that you can think of that we could do to better support rabbis at the RRC or rabbis who are already working either at a pulpit or at an organization.
I don't know, Caitlin. I feel like I would need to I need to continue to give it more thought. I'm not.
Yeah.
I think I'd wanna. Yeah, I mean, I'm not certain. I think that what the Kaplan Center does, sort of bringing to life a contemporary exploration of Kaplan's teaching, ideology, philosophy,
Mhm.
is important. And I think of thinking about creative ways to do that. You know, so in my mind, that's the piece of it. I'm not sure if it's about curriculum materials. I think resourcing for rabbis is probably the thing that I can think of as being most present and useful for our colleagues. So in my mind, that would be the next phase, is thinking about, you know, are there curricular materials? Are there adult education sessions where there's kind of a packaged piece, you know, like, so let's take the conversation we're having right now around disarmament, right?
Mhm.
I can imagine that would be a fascinating discussion to have in synagogues across the country, and in Jewish institutions across the country, and what would it look like for the Kaplan Center to create materials that can be purchased by colleagues to use. I don't know I'm not sure. I've given about 30 seconds of thought to that question. So I would say, like, I'd love to spend more time on it.
Absolutely.
And really dig into it. But I think that the resourcing of rabbis is for me the thing that's most interesting, most pressing.
One of the conversations that I had in another Zoom about the vision statement was someone from Canada, Sydney Nestel. He's on Mel's list and responds to him. And he's developed a 4-session course on Kaplan. So what I'm hearing you say is that if we have a section for curricula for various that can be adapted for adult education, that would be really helpful.
I think it could be. And I think it could also be a place to bring resources to the center as well, right? I think a really good quality, well-developed curriculum could be of importance.
I mean,
So
we have
actually,
something.
we could reach out to the RA if they've developed classes. Is that if they've developed?
I certainly think you could.
We have the raw material for exactly what you're talking about, which is the Kaplan Diary. You know, I mean, if I were 25 years younger, I would work on the curriculum materials that exactly you're talking about. And what I'm doing with Facebook, and in a very minor way with the RRA newsletter, is to give rabbis a sense of the value in the Kaplan diary.
That's right.
Because I feel in a certain way, you could talk about issues that are abstract, but then Kaplan is involved in thinking about this, that, ethical, spiritual, ritual, whatever it might be, and you know, one could add questions about particular citations from the diary. You know, I thought about that, but I just.
Well, you've done a tremendous job with the index, so that could be a way, right? That could be as a start of trying to find material within the diaries.
Yes, yes.
Certainly.
So,
And I think the Kaplan Center ought to be a primary. I hesitate to ask the question about the use of the diary among rabbis.
I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to that. I think if you, I don't know the answer to that. I find that I read the pieces that you send to the RA for the RA newsletter. I read them each time. I find them meaningful, and you know, and so I utilize them. I mean, I can think of at least 2 occasions that I used teaching. I used some of that writing in Divrei Torah that I gave, or in other places. So I find the snippets of them very valuable. So I think that's, yeah.
I just want to say how much I appreciate that, because it motivates me and it gives me, you know, the hope of a wider audience, and I very, very much appreciate that.
Sure.
Anyway.
Caitlin, you have anything else? Any other questions, comments?
I just want to encourage James that if he has any ideas or he mulls over things and he feels like he wants to send us an email about anything else, he should do that, you know, because
I won't hesitate. I promise.
Perfect. Yeah, that's
we'll
the
be
most I can
talking
ask.
to you about we're going to be brainstorming webinars for next year, and yours is one of the top 3, the how Reconstructionism is sensed through the different generations of rabbis.
Great.
And used.
Well, I am I'm appreciative of you taking the time, and excited to see what the future unfolds, how the future unfolds for the Kaplan Center.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's been
Thank
wonderful.
you so much.
Okay. Take care.
Have a great night.
Take care.
Thank you. He's a good partner.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I love I'm not sure how to get, I think having the Kaplan Center be a tab on the Reconstructing Judaism site would be, I think that would be terrific.
But the interviews that are on the website that you have done, that Caitlin